Hi, my name is Dr. Michelle Maidenberg. So, as you know, I've been doing these talks and trying to give the public some great tips to help you to cope through this virus. And I am so elated because I have Heather here. She will introduce herself, but she's a great friend and unfortunately has moved from New York to California. I don't get a chance to see her as often as I would like to. Um, but she is a wealth of knowledge. She created this incredible podcast, and she is an incredible parenting coach. So I am so excited because I know she is going to give you so many great tips. So without further ado, Heather.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Michelle, for having me on your little video. I'm excited to be here. So yeah, just a quick little bit about myself. Well, most importantly, I have two kids. So I have Landon, who's 9, and Addie, who's 6. Professionally, I am a professor, and then also I have, like you said, I have a podcast. So Prism Parenting is my podcast. And Prism Behavior is my online website, prismbehavior.com. And basically what I try to do is just kind of help parents out in terms of changing up the environment to, help with behavior issues with their kids. And I think today you wanted me to talk a few things about, obviously we're in this challenging time.
Yes.
And even as I record this, I hear my kids, who knows, they might burst in. I've locked the door, so hopefully not. I told my husband he's on duty. But yeah, we're in a challenging time where we are, it's a blessing in so many ways, right? We get to spend a lot of time together as a family, but at the same time, one of the things that families have been telling me, I don't know if it's the same for you, Michelle, is just any sort of issue that you've had with your kids has been intensified, right? Because
Absolutely.
normally we get these breaks, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what I wanted to talk about today, if it's cool, Michelle, is about adopting a proactive approach to parenting.
Great. Love it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I like to talk about proactive parenting versus reactive parenting. And I think that it's so easy to default into the reactive parenting mode, especially in times of stress, like right
Mm-hmm.
now,
Mm-hmm.
and what I mean by reactive parenting is kind of just dealing with things as they come, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if my child has a meltdown, then I'm like, oh, go sit on timeout, or, go, and it's just it's this long process, right?
Mm-hmm.
Versus proactive parenting is before any of the problems arise, I think about, what are ways that I can kind of facilitate an environment that my kids are less likely to act out in, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense, right?
Yes.
And so, and because here's the deal, a lot of these things aren't necessarily rocket science. You might say, I might say a few things today and you'd be like, oh, well, obviously I know that. But a lot of times, we aren't doing what we know we should be doing. And then, rather than, and here's the deal, you're going to spend the effort anyways. So you're going to either spend the effort and it's going to kind of result in this negativity of reacting what your kids are doing
Mm-hmm.
while they're doing the wrong thing, let's say, or you're going to spend the effort beforehand and it's going to be a more pleasant environment, hopefully, right? If that makes sense.
So true.
Yes. Yes. So I just have a few things written down
Sure.
that the viewers today can do. And hopefully if they adopt, if they find a few of these things to adopt, then they'll have that more of that proactive approach so that, less often they'll find themselves in a situation where they are having to react. Because no matter what you do, your kids are going to, give you a run for your money sometimes. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But the first thing I want to say is this: catch your kids being good. Okay. So it's so easy, for example, with my son, I might be cooking dinner and he's supposed to be feeding the dog. Okay. And if that's something that he struggles with, and it is something he struggles with, if he feeds the dog without complaining, I might not even notice sometimes, right? Because I'm so stressed out and I'm doing X, Y, and Z, right?
Mm-hmm.
Versus if he feeds the dog or if he complains while he feeds the dog, then he gets my attention, right? And so here's the deal though. If I am, if I notice when he does the things that he should do, then he's more likely to do those things in the future. So I don't know, like yesterday, he decided to randomly like organize our junk drawer of like pencils. I don't know. And which is super sweet because I love things that are organized.
Mhm.
So I don't know if he was just bored or if he was just trying to like win my love. I'm not sure, but I was so elated. But again, it's so
Really
easy to just,
matter.
I
Does
know.
that really matter? Right.
Yeah, yeah. So it's so easy though to just kind of move on to the next thing. But don't get me wrong, I don't always do this. I try to, but I try to make such a big deal about him doing that because I'm hoping in the future that he will do things like that.
Mhm.
So that's the first thing.
And also self-initiated too.
Totally. I mean, I
Wow.
don't even know where it came from. He
Yeah.
just like decided to do it, which was awesome. Maybe it came from boredom. I don't know. That's another thing we can talk about. It's okay for your kids to be bored, right? Um, Another thing I wrote down is tell your kids what to do rather than what not to do,
Mm.
right? So this is even like something simple with like young kids. Instead of saying like, don't bounce the ball in the house or whatever, it's
Mhm.
like, oh, we bounce the ball in the backyard or something like that. So it's
Mm.
because when we hear something negative, like don't do this, what our brain does is it associates that with other negative situations,
Mhm.
right? And so we're immediately more defensive, right?
Yeah.
Versus if we tell kids what to do, then it doesn't like elicit those same responses. I don't know if you've found that with your
I
own
was gonna just like add to that and say,
kids. Mhm.
like, we have a defensive brain, automatically. And
Yes.
when we hear the word don't, right,
Yes.
I think we have a rebellious brain and a
Yes.
defensive brain, right? So our
Yeah.
rebellious brain comes in and says, oh, really? You telling me not to do that? Well, I'm going to do it anyway, right? And then we have the
Yes.
defensive brain that says, that kind of builds up that resistance, So absolutely. It's like total defensive mode.
Yeah. And I mean, the reality is that we're saying the same thing,
Yeah.
but it's just in how we're saying it. And we're not, a lot of times we say, don't do this, we're going to say it with a negative tone of voice because we're used to, if we're going to tell somebody not to do something, it's going to come across kind of in that more,
Mm-hmm.
you know, condescending tone, if you will, versus if
And
we say, oh,
punitive
this is what
also,
we, yeah, yeah,
right?
for sure.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. The next thing I wanted to say, and it definitely goes along with this whole coronavirus being at home thing, try to set up, and I know people might roll their eyes a little bit with this. And so I'll kind of give some, clarification, but schedules are important. And even right now, like a lot of people probably initially were like, yay, we don't have to have a schedule. We don't have to run to this and that and the other thing in some ways, right? But I don't know about you and how it was with your family, but like when we first started out the quarantine and being home all day, both of my kids were having a little bit of anxiety of like, well, what do we do now? Well, can I do this? Can I do that? And they just kind of didn't know what the rules were and what the
Mm-hmm.
day was going to look like. And that created this like heightened sense of anxiety. And so what I did is I wrote it down. But here's the deal. Some people are like, oh, I don't want to do like a color coded spreadsheet and all that. And I mean, I'm weird. I actually did have like this cute little thing, right? That's posted on their wall. But you don't have to do it like that. I think the most important thing is kind of like sit down with your kids and decide what the rhythm of the day is going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
Get their buy-in about what they want to do so they have some of that control back. And then they don't have to come and ask you like every 5 seconds, well, can I play a game? Can I play video games now? Or can I watch TV now? Or what about, so
Mm-hmm.
if they know what to do, then it's going to really kind of foster some of that independent skills in them. And then they're not going to irritate you too if they constantly are asking you like, what do I do now? What do I do now? If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think, you're talking about expectations because then they'll
Mhm.
also be doing what they want to do as opposed to
Yes.
what they should be doing or what they shouldn't be doing. The one, I just wanted to add one more thing to that.
Yeah.
I'm going to also say that setting up family time as well, because what I found, because I have, older kids, I have
Yeah.
kids, from 11 to 19.
Yeah.
So there's a big spread there. And what, the challenge that we find is how do we find activities to do as a family that everybody will enjoy, that everybody will want to participate. That's been a big challenge. So my husband and I sat down and we wrote a survey, literally,
Yeah.
and we
Oh,
gave
that's
it to our
awesome.
yeah, and we gave it to our kids. We gave them a choice like of activities. We gave them a choice like one was a movie, right? So we gave them choices of movies and then put other. We really tried to open that. We got their feedback, and then we
Yeah.
sat down with them once we got our surveys back,
Yeah.
and we went over it with them and said, this is what the consensus was, this is what we're going to be doing. So you could do that in so many different ways, and I feel like including them in the process, which
Is huge.
yeah, which
We
I
did the
love.
same. We did the same thing. Or something similar. We each wrote down. So at the beginning of all this, especially because we actually had the first week was kind of like they changed our spring break, and then we ended up having like an enrichment week, which was really like a second spring break because I
Mhm.
think that the teachers worked the first spring break to get everything online.
Yeah.
And so we did that. We like everybody wrote down on cards 3 things they wanted to do,
Hmm.
so we could draw things out. And what we ended up finding, so we had these like great intentions, and that thing is still like sitting out. And I think we've done it twice.
Hmm.
So I don't know. I guess all that to say, it's a good reminder that, those are great things to do, but kind of forgive yourself too, is if you have these grandiose plans and then things change. Because
Yeah.
what we found, and I don't know if this is for you, I mean, with the digital learning and work, and we always get out pretty much as a family and go on a hike or a walk or a bike ride halfway through the day. We eat lunch
Hmm.
together, and then we'll do that. When we do that, and school and work, and do all the things we need to during the week, we actually aren't having a lot of free time.
Hmm.
The week is pretty busy,
Yeah.
even in this environment. And so we found that we haven't had as much time as we thought we would have, so but I think, yeah, that sense of buy-in is
Yeah.
really important. And I think your point about older kids is definitely true. I mean, I want to give my kids control, but especially older kids, a lot of times they don't want to even hang out in the best of times, right?
No. Well, they want to be in their rooms,
Yeah.
and they want to be
Yeah.
talking to their friends because that's what they miss the most out of this,
Yeah.
is being with their
Yeah.
friends.
Yeah.
And I also, there was another thing that you reminded me of. I also teach as well. I teach a graduate course at NYU, and I have the students do journals.
Yeah.
And it was so interesting. But the one thing that they said that's making them anxious is that there's all these articles and all of these social media like advocating for schedule, and that
Yeah.
they find it so anxiety provoking because they're like actually thankful that there's not this tight schedule that they usually have when they're living their everyday life, and like could
Yeah.
every and if they're not keeping their schedule, they're feeling guilty or they're feeling they're doing something wrong. But it
Yeah.
was it was so interesting because that kind of came up for them, for a lot of them, in their journals when they wrote about
That's really interesting. I think that makes sense for college students, and I think it makes sense for, parents as well. Because one of the things I try to say is like, you do you. No mom or
it.
dad guilt with all of these things.
Yeah.
If you find that, that the schedule is stressing you out, then you throw that schedule away. Or like with us, like trying to find enough time to do our little cards, that was stressing me out. I told my kids, we just can't do that during the week. I'm sorry,
Uh-huh.
And so you have to like modify and not live according to other people's expectations. And and it might just be more of a cadence. I think it was more important, honestly, maybe even in the beginning, to
Hmm.
have a little bit of a routine, especially when you have younger kids, because they don't know what they should do, right? And
Yeah.
they're looking to you for that guidance. And so, but yeah, I think that's a good point, because
I
a lot
love
of these things can stress you out.
Yeah, but I love that point too, because I think what we're basically both saying is for younger kids, the structure is really helpful. And it's interesting because for my 11-year-old,
Yeah.
she does have more structure.
Yeah.
For the older kids, I feel like they're so schedulized that
Yeah.
there's something very freeing
Yeah.
about not
They
being
were
so
overscheduled
scheduled.
to begin with.
That's what I'm saying. So there's
Yeah.
actually something freeing about not being
Yeah.
schedulized.
Yeah, I know that's a
Yeah,
really that's a really good point. And it depends on the person too. Like
completely.
my son Landon, who has ADHD. Like he has like, I have a schedule on his wall, but he wants to also on top of that, because one of the things in his schedule is do his schoolwork, which is obviously a few hours.
Mhm.
And so he writes him down. He's 9. He writes himself like his own mini schedule of what that means, like that is what makes him happy versus
Great.
my daughter Addie is just more like a little bit more like happy go lucky in that way. Like
Uh-huh.
she doesn't need that. So we all kind of need different things, and your kids and yourself, you're going to need other things. So yeah, not focusing on what other people tell you
Yeah.
should or shouldn't do during this time is important.
Yeah. And I know for myself, like I'm the kind of person that needs a schedule. Like that would make me feel completely out of control.
Yes,
So,
yeah, yeah. So, and then the only other thing, two things. First of all, for those with like younger kids, and I don't know if this applies as much, you can tell me for older kids,
mhm,
there is just some schoolwork that I throw away, like that I have decided not to do
mhm,
because, and maybe my kids, for example, do like some reading tutoring online with their grandma. They've done that throughout the year. And so, there's just certain things of schoolwork that I just don't find necessary and valuable. And our school has been pretty understanding about that. They gave the
mhm,
parents a lot of power. But if it's not helpful to your child and it's not working in this environment, just that might feel freeing. Just throw it away. I've thrown away certain things.
mhm,
And then the only other thing is, and I'm a big proponent of using like rewards with kids, is,
mhm,
I would say, using a reward system is helpful of some nature. So during certain times in our life, like we've used more structured rewards.
mhm,
We've done rewards with quarters, we've done rewards with candy, we've done rewards with activities, things like that. And then in other times in our lives, we've done a little bit less of a reward system, like a less structured. And actually right now we're doing more of less structured. So for example, it's more of an order of events. So again, it kind of goes along with that schedule. Like my kids know what they need to check off on their list, and then they get some screen time.
mhm,
Right. And so that technically is a reward system. First, you do the harder things, then you get the reward. And so right now, that more simplistic reward system is helpful for them. But in times where they've struggled with their behavior, a more specific and explicit system, where I'm like, okay, you earn quarters for doing your homework without complaining and doing your chore without complaining. Those things have been
mhm.
helpful. So
I love
anybody
that.
who's listening to this, if they want, they can go and download on my website. I have a guide,
Mhm,
a free guide for parents. So they go to prism behavior.com
mhm.
/free guide. There's just some examples of different types of reward systems that people
And
can
I
use
have to
for
say that
kids.
I've recommended it to parents,
Awesome.
and they've found all of your material and all of your talks so helpful.
Awesome.
So,
Thank
yeah, so I'm
you.
gonna recommend whoever watches this to really, even if you don't think you need it or want it, like,
Yeah.
take a stab at it because it's
Awesome.
really, really valuable.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad.
Well, thank you so much for being here, and I
Yeah.
really appreciated all the tips that you gave, and I know that they're gonna be really, really helpful.
Yeah.
So, as always, I'm sure I'm speaking for Heather as well. We wish your families, of course, safety and health. Thank
Of
you.
course. Of course. Thanks for having me.